Hi guys, and welcome back, and welcome to those of you who are new to my podcast. This is Simone, me, with OwlCatDesigns, and you are watching episode 4 of my podcast, My Handmade Life, in which I talk a lot about knitting and all the things that go with the business of knitting. In this episode, I'm actually going to give you a little glimpse into TNNA, or into the trade show that TNNA does in the summer. TNNA is the National Needle Arts the National Needle Arts Association. It's an organization that encompasses a lot of different industries in the yarn and needle arts world. So there's embroidery and cross stitch along with the knitting and the yarns of that sort, and obviously knitwear designers and everything else that goes along with it. And this year the trade show was in early June, and it was in Columbus. No, wait, normally it's in Columbus. This year it was in Cleveland, Ohio, and I had a booth there with my distributor, Stitch Sprouts. So if you're a yarn store, you can get my patterns and my books. They're distributed through Stitch Sprouts, and I can put the link below, and you can order them there. So I went to the trade show to display some of my things so that people who visit this show, and it's not a open for the public show, this is an industry only show, so you can go and attend it if you're like a yarn store owner and things of that sort. So I talked to a lot of yarn stores about my workshops that I do, my classes, and all the patterns that I've designed. And of course I only had like a little bit of that with me because I have a half booth and it doesn't have that much space, but people were able to order the patterns through my distributor, who was also there. So we had divvied up the space that we had. We were able to get shared spaces from her to display our part of the deal, so to speak. So that is always a lot of fun, and it's always super exciting, and I look forward to it all year. And then of course when I'm there, it's a lot of fun. I see so many people that I don't see very often, except at these shows and at different industry events. Some of my designer friends, some of my friends in the yarn industry, yarn companies or reps or whatever. So it's always a load of fun. But it's also really, really busy because I talk to everybody all day, and then in the evening I usually have meetings with yarn companies or whatever, and we go out to dinner. And so you're on for 3 days straight. You have to set up your booth, you're on, and then you break down your booth, and then you drive back home. And I try to not overdo it, but since I'm an introvert, I do need that alone time afterwards. So I need to just schedule a couple days where I don't talk to anyone, where I just get to hang out in nature, play in my garden, go for a hike, and just basically sit somewhere and stare off into space and not do anything. This time it actually felt like, when I came home, it felt like I had no more words. I had used up all the words that were inside of me, and I needed to replenish this tank of words again before I could have a sensible conversation. So we're gonna go over, I'm going to show you how I packed my car and some of the prep work. I had 2 more patterns that had to get done right before. And also I made a little video of some of the shawls that I was thinking about taking. I didn't take all of those in the end, but I think it's still fun to see some of my designs. And there's also a tutorial in this podcast today on how to do the brioche purl stitch, which you will need if you knit my new design called Spiralize. Yeah, it is inspired by the zucchini thing that you can make spiral spaghetti things out of vegetables, because the pattern just spiralizes to the side, so it just seemed appropriate. And we're also going to go on a little hike. Actually, that hike is from earlier in the year, but I haven't had time to show you yet. It was a hike where I got to see wild orchids, wild pink lady slippers on the Appalachian Trail, which goes through just 40 minutes from my house. So that's always really nice to go. And one of my friends told me that these orchids were on this particular stretch. So I was able to go there and see them while they were blooming, which was really awesome. Other than that, I am sitting inside right now because it is super hot out there. I filled my baby pool. I got one of those $20 baby pools at Walmart or something. And I filled it with water, and after I'm done here with my intro, I'm going to stick my feet in it and knit, because that's the only way to be on a day when it's a heat index of 103. And yeah. Well, thank you again for joining me for episode 4. And this is a shorter one than the others because I've just been super busy with all the new designs and so many new ideas and things that I had to finish up before TNNA and then after TNNA. And now, you know, the 4th of July is coming up, which for the people here in the US is a big holiday. And so it's going to break up the week and I will not have enough time to do all the things that I need to do usually because, you know, you need to take time off. I mean, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to grill on the 4th of July because that's what we do. And hopefully in the next episode, I will show you a little bit more sewing and some other things, but I will also put in a little piece into this episode, into episode 4 about my garden, because while I was away, my tomato plants grew like a foot and they've grown another foot since. It's just once it's hot and humid and the sun is shining, those things just take off. I don't have any tomatoes yet because we had a really, really cold spring, so it took a lot longer for the plants to be able to go outside and to take off. I grew all my plants from seeds. I have a grow lamp that I can set up in the basement, and so I have heirloom tomato seeds that I save every year, and I replanted those. And since I have a very small garden, and you will see in my little video, since I have a very small garden, I can't plant too many things, otherwise they just take over each other and then you can't see anything. So behind me you can see my living room. It's all like a big one room open floor plan sort of thing, but here's my living room and my spinning wheel. Hang on, can you see my spinning wheel? I think you can. So my spinning wheel and some of my knitting things are there and some of my yarn. And yeah, that's it. Well, welcome to my home and thank you for tuning in to episode 4, and I hope you enjoy it. And please leave comments below if you have any questions or if there's anything that you'd like to have me talk about next time. And yeah, that's it. I'm so excited that you're all here and thank you for watching. Guys, I just decided to get out for like a little hike, so come with me. It's one of those days in May where it's very pleasant in the woods, even though it got a little warm, a little humid in other places. So I took my car and I drove up this mountain to access the Appalachian Trail. So we're gonna go for a little walk. Birds are amazing. So my friend told me that there's some pink lady slippers up here, so I want to go see those while they're in bloom. Hi guys, it's Simone, and today I'm going to show you how to do the brioche purl, or burp. BRP is the abbreviation you will normally see in a pattern, and I'm going to first show you and then explain it. And this of course is for Continental knitters. I will try to show you as well for the throwers among you. It may be a bit awkward because I'm not that good at the throwing thing, as you may have seen in my first podcast. However, so when you're looking at brioche, you always have 2 rows that you're doing in order to get 1 complete row, because you're only working half the stitches and the other half is going to get worked with the second cowl. So I'm here on my second row. I'm on the purl row, which is the ones that are sort of receding into the back here on the front. This this shawl is Lita, and it will come out soon. It may be out by the time this video goes live. And it has a couple of other stitches in there as well as just a regular brioche stitch, so don't get confused by these fun looking things. I will explain those in a later video, but for right now, the basics. So for your brioche purl, each brioche purl, each brioche stitch has the stitch itself and a yarn over that belongs to it. So when you're counting the stitches, these are considered one. And when you're working them, they're also considered one. And you're working the purl using both these stitches. So you're purling, essentially you're purling the yarn over together with its stitch. And then the in-between stitches, the one that have already been worked on your previous row, on the knit row, you're slipping with a yarn over. So it's yarn over, slip one, and then you're going to need to bring the yarn back to the front for your purl stitch and purl the yarn over with its stitch together. A lot of times these are referred to collared stitches, like the yarn over ends up hanging on the stitch as if it has like a little clothes hanger or a collar on it. So yarn over, slip, you're always slipping the stitches as if to purl because you've already worked the knit stitches on the row before, and you're going to work them again on the next half row, I guess is what you want to call it, on the back side. So yarn over, slip, bring the yarn back to the front for your purl, purl the stitch together with its yarn over. Again, yarn over, slip, and purl the stitch together. Yarn over. See, now when you're a continental knitter, it actually is really fast and really quick to just bring the yarn forward and slip the stitch all in one fell swoop, and then go on to your purl stitch. So here again, you have the yarn in the front for your purl stitch like you're normally purling, and then you're just going to purl the stitch with its yarn over together. You can always tell when you're working brioche which stitch you're going to work and which stitch you're going to slip. When you're looking at your needle, like here, you see how the majority of the stitches, don't ignore this increase here, the majority of the stitches here is blue, right? There are more blue stitches than orange stitches. So that means you're working with the orange yarn. When your stitches on the needle are more of the other color, they're always going to be more of the other color on your needle. So you're going to, if you're at the end of the row and you don't know where to go, you're going to look at the stitches and say, okay, well, most of them, or like 2/3 of them are blue, I'm going to work with the orange. If 2/3 of them are orange, like at the end of this row, it's going to look like this, you're going to work with the blue. And as you're coming across the row, if you have a single stitch, that's the one you're slipping with a yarn over. And if you have one that has a yarn over going over it or next to it, that's the one you're working either as a brioche purl, like here, or a brioche knit if you're on the opposite row. So slip. So again, for continental knitters, once you have the hang of this, you can literally just slip, bring the yarn to the front after your purl, or leave it there because the purl makes it be in the front anyway. Slip your knit stitch with the yarn in the front and then go right back to the purl stitch. So you can see I'm swinging my needle around behind it into the stitch for my purl and through. Slip, purl, slip, purl. If you're a thrower, I know it's a bit more involved because your yarn is over here. And as you're slipping, you have to remember to bring the yarn forward. Bear with me. Forward first. You're slipping that stitch. Then you bring the yarn over as your yarn over. And then you need to bring it back to the front like such. So it stays over there. And then so you have it in place for your purl, which I think works like that. Right? So from here, yarn over the needle, slip, bring the yarn back forward for your purl stitch. I think it is not as awkward if you actually know how to throw. My problem is that, or my problem, well, the thing is that I am from Switzerland and I learned how to knit continental there. And so that's the only way I really know how to knit. I can sort of fake the the throwing, but as you can see, it's a bit awkward. So if you can get yourself to work continental, brioche knitting is just like doing slightly funky ribbing. It is really no big deal at all. So again, I'm going to show you again how we're doing the brioche purl in the continental style. So you're slipping, bring the yarn forward, slip the next stitch, bring the yarn back to the front for your purl stitch, and purl the yarn over and it's stitched together. That's a burp. That's a brioche purl. Yarn stays in the front of the needle. Slip the stitch. Make sure you don't bring it to the front for your purl, but that it's actually going around the needle and stays there, because you need that yarn over for your next row. Brioche purl, yarn over, slip, brioche purl, slip the yarn over, brioche purl, slip with the yarn over. Here we go, friends. I hope this helps, and I will show you next how we're doing some of the increases in the Lita shawl, and I hope you enjoy knitting this. Hi guys, so the car Tetris has commenced. I'm loading the car up for TNNA, so this is probably going to go into the podcast after I'm back. And I have recovered from TNNA, so here is part of my shelf system. And I have a table, I have some chairs, I have my dress form Emily, and then I have some of the samples, some of the shelves and the other things I need. And here goes my sign, and a big sign to put up. So all of that needs to fit in the car, plus my personal stuff and Angel's personal stuff. So let's go see. I know it's really hot out, but you can't feel that in the video, but here's my little setup outside with my pool, which I'm going to put my feet into. Oh, I may have to cool that down again and like dump this in the grass, but here is my little raised bed garden, and I'm going to take you down there in a minute so you can see it better. But from up here you can see that's the zucchini, which is supposed to be a container variety, so hopefully that will actually work out. In here we have some cucumbers. That's a radicchio. Dad's basil, my weld plants, And over here in the middle here, I don't know if you can actually see them, there might be behind the tomatoes, is my indigo. So I have some dye plants interspersed with the rest. That big thing is my bean pole. There's another bean pole over here. In the back I have peas coming along. That big thing's a rhubarb, and in the front here, that's tomatoes, and that is tomatoes. I also have 2 berry bushes. I have a black currant over here and a red currant, which is the little one on the other side here, which are almost ripe, and I'm going to eat those soon. So besides my house, I have these giant I cut them down every year and they just grow back into these giant monsters. I have these giant butterfly bushes, and then this year I planted sunflowers with shorter sunflowers in the front. These ones in the back are supposed to get really tall. And then nasturtiums, or Kapuzinerkresse, like we say in German, and Kornblumen, or bachelor's buttons, which are just about to bloom. I have them in a variety of colors here. Let's see if we can see some of the nasturtiums are blooming in here. They probably don't get enough sun because they're so crowded, but I just wanted a whole bunch of plants in here. I have another rhubarb here, and then here is my raised bed. Oh, my witchy garden is coming along really well too. You can see over here I have 2 digitalis, or foxgloves, growing because this part of the house doesn't get sun all the time, so I figured this would be perfect for them. And then over here is my raised bed, and I have my little cucumber plant. There's a strawberry in there too, a straggler. But here's my little cucumbers. Yeah, they haven't really taken off yet. I think I need to give them some more water. I just moved them from over here where they were in their pot, and I think they don't get sun in the morning, so maybe that held them back. So I moved them over here. Now they don't get sun in the afternoon because of my neighbor's tree, but I think they're going to get more sun here, so we will see. And then here are my container variety of summer squash. These are supposed to be dark green zucchinis. Oh, another strawberry in there. Nice. No flowers on it or anything, but it's at least a plant. Maybe next year. Here is my radicchio. Oh, and there's some carrots. You couldn't see those from the top. I have a couple of rows of really scraggly carrots going. That's the weld over there. And my beans, which are trailing up the pole. Funny story, I was always growing bush beans in here, which of course take up a lot more space because you have to have a whole row. And then a friend of mine, I was talking to a friend of mine, she's like, oh, I always plant pole beans because they take less space. And I said to her, I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, I don't know where I would get these really tall poles. Like my parents had in our garden back in Switzerland. We had bush beans and sometimes we had pole beans. But I remember it was like these giant poles. And like, I'm like, you need like a 10 or 20 foot pole for those, I said to her. And she looked at me and she's like, how do you think your parents picked those? And it dawned on me that the poles were probably not all that tall because my mom never had to use a ladder to pick them. And it was just in my mind because I was a child at the time that they were these giant poles. So once I realized that, I got myself 8-foot poles here. And now I have beans growing up, and it takes a whole lot less space because I can have the peas over here, which are just finally starting to bloom. Some of them are ginormous. And then here are my tomatoes. And I had to put a fence up around it because the bunnies were really getting to my veggies. And, you know, I like to share, but not that much. So in here, you can see my first tomatoes. They're not ripe yet or anything, but at least they have a tomato shape and not just flowers anymore. Again, my rhubarb. And then here is my second pole bean. And it's made it pretty far up yet. No flowers yet, but that's gonna come soon, I'm sure. And then here we have the peas. They're in flower now, and so hopefully, even though we got off to a really late start, hopefully soon I will at least have some snow peas. And then over there's the bean again. That one's not as tall yet, but there's more going on all at the same time. Also in my garden lives a toad. He's under this board, and probably won't see him right now because I don't want to go in there and disturb him, but he's made his home over there on the other side, and I can't step on it anymore because obviously I don't want to trample on the poor guy. But I think it means that my garden's pretty healthy because toads will eat the bugs, and since I have bugs, you know, I know it's an organic garden, but still I'm I'm pretty happy to have them here. And some nights I also see a frog in here that comes from somewhere. Oh, and then I just wanted to show you one more thing, which is my red currants and my black currants. So this is my cassis bush, which has set a whole lot of fruit this year. I mean, look at this. I hope it, let's see if we can have this zoom in on a bundle of them, because they're so pretty. So those are my cassis, and they're like, the branches are just loaded. So I think tomorrow, when it's not so hot anymore, I'm gonna come out and pick them. And these guys here, my red currants, I think my red currants need another couple days, because you can see they're still a bit pale. They need to be like red, not like pinkish red. I mean, this is a red variety. I know there's pink varieties, but this is a red variety.